Here's Mike Winters.
And good morning. It is 26 minutes after 7 o'clock, and joining us in studio this morning, candidate for magistrate judge, running right here. It's all here, but Nicole Rogers joining us this morning. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Well, I guess the first question is probably the question everyone asks is, what made you decide to say, you know what, I want to roll up my sleeves and run for magistrate judge?
Well, it was about 10 years ago.
Okay.
My law enforcement experience comes from the county jail.
Gotcha.
And in the county jail, we literally live with the incarcerated for 8 to 12 hours a day, every day.
Sure. You probably hear their stories. You learn about these
yes.
folks and people.
Exactly. And you have to survive. So I was releasing an inmate, and he's in his cuffs and shackles, and I'm holding him, and we're walking down, and he's happy. You know, everybody's happy they're getting out of jail. And he goes, "That's 3." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "That's 3, Miss Rogers. That's 3 times." And I said, "What are you talking about?" 3 times I got away with murder.
Wow.
Yep. And he was only 19.
And he was bragging about it.
Yeah. He was very brazen. So I thought, you know what? You know, and in the jail, which we can get into later, how we have to live amongst one another, you know, you're forced not to judge them unless their actions, you know, require you to judge them.
Sure. Like if they're about to do something, then you got to step in. But,
right.
But if they think a certain way, guess what? It's America. You're allowed to think that way.
Exactly. So when he said that, and, you know, I go to release him, and he's just, there's nothing, no emotion, no regard, no remorse. And I thought, wow, I want to be a part of stopping this.
Gotcha.
Didn't really know exactly. I was happy. I was happy at the jail. I loved working there.
Sure.
But I thought once the chance comes, I'm going to jump on it.
Gotcha.
I didn't think it would be coming so soon, but it did. And this is my opportunity, and I'm going to pounce on it. So.
Excellent. So, let's talk now. And this is a question. This is something that's kind of unique to the magistrate judge position. It's whereas other individuals that are running for a judge, or whether it be an elected or an appointed position, you know, there's a certain set of kind of what we think of as responsibilities for a judge. Magistrate judge kind of takes all of that and then adds another level to it, because as a magistrate judge here in Chavez County, not only do you have to be up on, you know, the judge stuff, you know, making decisions, the legal proceedings, but you got to kind of be a good office manager too, because at the end of the day, the magistrate judge is also the head of the office, making sure the paperwork gets done, you know what I mean? All the non-sexy stuff of being a judge is there. So not only does the magistrate judge have to be an individual that's good at the legal side, but kind of organized and have some office management skills here. So kind of talk about your skill set. Like you said, you know, serving at the detention here, but center here as a corrections officer. But talk a little bit about just your overall experience on handling not only the legal aspect, but the side of you got to organize the office too.
Right. Well, the experience at the county jail is a prime example. So every legislative session, more laws passed down, House bills passed down that the facilities, especially accredited facilities, have to enforce or be in compliance with. So as an operations lieutenant, I was a lieutenant out there, you are in charge of making sure that the inmates and the officers are doing their job. So you're managing them.
Sure.
You're managing the facility. It's a $16 million facility. You have to make sure it's running, you know. Then you got to get people to come to work, all that good stuff.
Sure.
On time.
Is the judge the one who calls it, hey, you're calling in late, you're missing work? Do they get to delegate that as a judge?
I'm not sure. Maybe. I'm pretty sure judges' staff will behave a little bit differently.
Somebody can handle that in the office, right?
Yeah, but so anyway, you have to learn how to enforce those rules or those House bills. No matter how radical they might be, you know, you have no choice. You have to enforce them. You have to initiate and institute them. So all of that, and then you got to be able to present your compliance with those to the county commissioners or to the city, you know, to civilians. So it's much the same. I mean, you have to be able to enforce the laws and the rules that are in there, and then you have to be able to manage and operate a completely different. I mean, as a lieutenant, I think I was over at one point 80 officers and then close to 400 inmates, along with making sure that the facility was running as it should be.
Sure.
So a lot of different moving parts that, is second nature to me.
So just being default as a corrections officer, you juggle a lot of balls.
Yes.
Just because that's the nature of that job.
Yes.
So it a lot of it translates as a judge, basically.
Correct.
Too.
Correct.
I do want to talk emotion a little bit with you because obviously working as a CO, that can be a very emotional environment. Obviously the courtroom can be that depending on the cases and things. Explain that experience and what that takes because like you said, the reason you're being a judge is because you're seeing, some of these criminals that you're like, you know what, this is something that I want to make a difference about
Right.
and things. But there's probably stuff you see every day that makes you mad. There's stuff that makes you sad. There's stuff that makes you happy. But the law is the law. I mean, as a judge, you get a little bit of discretion there on,
Right.
if when emotion can come into play. But talk about that experience and when as a judge, because you had to do it as a CO, know when to separate this guy deserves worse, but I can only do here and let my, you know what I mean? Where your
Right.
emotion can get in the way. It's like, look, this piece of garbage deserves much worse than what's going to happen to them. But, how do you negotiate that? Because we live in a world where people are doing that very poorly right now.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But as a judge, you don't get the luxury of slipping there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So how do you negotiate that as a CO and how will you negotiate that as a judge?
Well, what's funny, in the jail is a forgotten or a hidden branch of law enforcement.
Yeah.
It's out of sight, out of mind. Nobody really cares because that's where all the bad guys go. As long as they're not on the streets, nobody cares.
Sure.
But when you're living in there with them, like I did, it's a city within a city. It's 100% self-sufficient. So you are the judge, jury, and executioner in
Sure.
there. So as far as emotion goes, the jail teaches you to remember the human aspect. We are all humans. And no matter how evil one might seem or how harsh their charges are, or just the regular Joe or the mentally ill, we're all humans.
Gotcha.
And you learn that your emotions, you have to remain objective.
Sure.
So when they're in jail, they commit a crime within there, you have to hold them accountable for that. And each crime essentially has its own sanctions. So you get the discretion on, do you deserve to lose your freedom within there this X amount of days or more?
Sure.
Do we take your freedoms away from you? And so I've been doing that for years.
Gotcha.
And yeah, emotion comes into play. I mean, you have to learn to set it aside. It's the first lesson you learn, like I said, is the human aspect.
Sure.
The second is, what are you going to do? I mean, you cannot, as bad as you want to, make someone be quiet. And in the jail, that's what you learn. I've had a guy that he killed one of a friend of mine, a childhood friend. And he knew that we knew each other, and he would laugh in my face every day. And I still had to treat him the same way that I treated the guy that was in there for not paying his tickets.
Sure. Despite the fact at probably given times you're ready to beat the living snot out of this person.
Oh yeah. But you learn, okay. And then if this guy messed up, guess what? He got the book thrown at him. But if he didn't, I still had to treat him the same way. And I know that experience that I gained there and that knowledge is really going to come into play when it comes time to be a judge.
Sure.
I mean, it's not a soft on crime by any means. You mess up,
Sure.
then you got to pay the price. But also, it's not everybody belongs in jail either. I've seen people lose their whole their livelihood, because they made a stupid mistake.
Sure.
And because I've seen that time in and time out, it's one of those that if I was on the bench, I'd be able to say, you know what, you're a tax-paying citizen and you made a mistake. Get out.
Gotcha.
Go back to work.
You can tell your difference between your frequent flyer, so to speak,
Yes.
versus someone that just had a bad night and made a mistake. And
Right.
we don't want to ruin their life for it. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. And then I understand the mentally ill as well. There's nowhere for them to go. And nobody's trained in dealing with them anymore. So, the crazy guy that you see screaming down the street is not necessarily a bad guy. He just, he seems scary.
Sure.
But then he gets gets locked up and there's no one there to help them.
Sure.
You know, they get the basic help, but so that's another aspect. You know, you see them locked up, they don't necessarily belong in jail. They deteriorate in there. So it's one of those. As a judge, I'd be able to say, hey, can we get this person help? Is there an alternative program?
Gotcha.
You know, something like that, because we're all people. You know, some of us need help.
Sure. Well, and that's and I would think to be good as a corrections officer and to be good as a judge, you know, you're playing Kenny Rogers here. You got to know when to be hard, when to be soft, when to be like a parent or a mentor,
Right.
and when to be just a friend, and when to be that. All right, we're done with your nonsense. We gotta. When to be the disciplinarian,
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so that's a constant juggle of, you know, okay, which tact do I go here? And,
Exactly.
And you do that on a daily basis as a CO, just like you would as a magistrate judge.
Exactly.
Obviously, we talk, and this is something that, especially at this level, and I always tell people when you go to vote at elections, the local elections, the one at the county level, the city level, these are elections that impact your day-to-day life much more. And I always tell people, pay more attention to these races.
Right.
These are the ones you really should do your homework on. We do all kinds of homework for our national races, but at the same time, these are the same people that live in our community. These are folks you see at church, you see at the stores, you see at the parks, things like that. So it's a little different in those things. But I do want to talk experience too, because obviously your father, K.C. Rogers, who's well-respected, been a magistrate judge. I mean, everyone know. I mean, being a judge, I mean, how much has that influenced you to becoming a magistrate judge, knowing your dad is there? But also, like, how does that work? You know, if your dad's judge, you're judge, how would that impact the day-to-day work environment? Would that be something that's could be a problem for you guys, or is it good? I mean, I'm sure you guys have a good relationship,
Right?
But you know what I mean. Like, how does that interaction work, and how much influence of your dad being a magistrate judge has that had on you?
Influence-wise, your parents. As a child, your parents,
your
you look
daughter's
up to them.
dad, you know,
You know what I mean? So, unfortunately, I didn't work in the police. He was a state police officer, and
Gotcha.
I didn't necessarily want to go that
You didn't
route.
take the exact path,
Right. And my mother is the kindest woman in the world. I have very good examples
Sure.
to follow, and my big sister. So
Right, city council,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as with my dad being a magistrate judge, if I were to become magistrate judge, anybody that understands the court processes or the courtrooms, it's two completely separate court
Gotcha. So there's no mingling between the judges
No.
as far as
cases
caseload and
hey,
things like
how
that.
should I judge this
Gotcha.
guy? Or there's no influence. Some people are saying nepotism. There's no nepotism, or it wouldn't be allowed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I do want to get your thoughts, because some people have said that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, well, in your opinion, how does that impact, if at all, the office there?
No, it doesn't. Like I said, they're completely separate. You have your own case managers, your own clerks. Yes, you have to be in the office with one another, but
Sure.
it's no different than a father that's a doctor and his son that's a doctor in the same office.
Gotcha.
I mean, you're not.
The cases don't tie together. There's
Right.
no connection in
Right.
what Casey Rogers is doing on the bench versus what Nicole Rogers is doing
Right,
on the bench.
right.
Gotcha.
And we're not at a hair salon, and we're not sitting there gossiping. You know what I mean? Judges are held to a higher standard.
Sure.
There's things you don't talk about.
Sure.
So as far as influence or authority, there's no authority
Sure.
over the other. We all answer to the Supreme Court or the
Sure.
administration of the courts. So as far as that goes, it's,
And I'm guessing, that regardless of who your two magistrate judges are, there is a meeting of the minds. You probably compare cases and talk shop with them, regardless of who you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's that anyway, regardless of whether it was daughter and dad, or just two strangers that
Right.
met as magistrate judges.
yeah,
you know?
exactly. And as far as recusals go, it's not going to be any different than any other recusal.
Gotcha.
With any other judge.
Okay.
It's Roswell. It's a small town.
Sure.
But yeah, so as far as if you are going to be a judge, then you are going to hold yourself accountable, and you're going to hold yourself to a higher standard.
Sure.
So no, I mean, there's no issue there. And like I said, anybody that understands the
Sure.
courtroom and how it works, then they'll understand that there's no issue there.
Gotcha.
So,
I'm just curious, gee whiz, because obviously, as a CEO, high stress job, the magistrate judge can also be that. How do you cope with stress, and how do you deal with, just because obviously a CEO, certainly these are jobs that if you don't handle yourself well, it can eat you up.
Yes.
How do you? I'm just curious. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure that you're taking care of yourself too?
Well, family.
Okay.
Is a big one. Gosh, you surround yourself with people like in the jail. I had a lot of friends that we would go and work out together, or go wind down a little bit.
Sure.
But just like any other person, I mean, the stress is almost. It's one of those where it's like, what do you do if there's no stress? I would be stressed about that.
That would be a big worry.
Yeah. Because it's just one of those, in the jail, you want to talk about split second decisions.
Sure.
Because we don't have guns or any weapons really to defend ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You rely solely on your communication skills. So once you learn that, you find yourself, life's a little bit easier to deal with. You know what I mean? If you can just talk it out or find different avenues. So yeah. And like I said, probably no stress would be more stressful than high stress for me.
Gotcha. Just gee whiz curiosity, what do you like to do when you're not doing work stuff? What's your hobbies, interests? What do you like to do around town when you're not serving the community?
Well, that's been a while. So,
she's like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, exactly. So as the secretary of the Federated Women,
okay,
Republican Women, I put in a lot of hours. My goal is to, as a human again, bringing back the human perspective.
Sure.
We really need younger people to start stepping up. And I have found that avenue with the Republican Women is getting out and, besides knocking doors and my countless hours of campaigning and all this good stuff, is communicating with the public and educating. We have to get involved. There is a huge gap from your classic staunch Republicans, the older generation, people that are leaders essentially. And then there's like a gap somewhere. And then you have really not a whole lot of people that are involved.
Sure.
And honestly, whatever side of the fence you're on, get involved. So I spend a lot of time trying to get people involved.
Sure.
Because this is our future. And if we don't start standing up and towing the line, I mean, it's very scary what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's happening.
I would imagine, too, you have a unique perspective as a CEO because you see the criminal element, what's going on, and that there's trends just like any other. I'm sure you see a rash of maybe drug-addicted folks, maybe a rash of sex trafficking related. I mean, those ebb and flow on some of that stuff. So by default, as a CEO, I think you kind of get your finger on the pulse of what's kind of the criminal issues or those elements are kind of what's going on at the time.
Totally. And as a judge, what I understand and what I bring to the table as well is it's not just whether you're guilty or not guilty. There's a whole slew of responsibilities that a judge has. One of those is being able to stand up and say, hey, some of these laws that are coming down, catch and release, bail reform, are really, really hurting us. You can say and essentially maybe like fight for that to stop or change. Probably will never win that battle. But what I bring to the table is I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop fighting for it. You got to protect. You have a duty to protect your people, including the police officers, including yourself. So that's another thing that I know that I'd be able to bring to the table as far as being a judge goes.
Gotcha. Just for you personally, I mean, is your aspirations to kind of stay through the judge's tree here, is magistrate judge it, or are you like wanting the goals to move up to and maybe serve in a different court at some point?
Yeah, becoming an attorney is definitely I guess a future goal of mine.
Okay.
I haven't necessarily laid the groundwork for it just yet, but it sits there, because it would be nice to be a judge on a higher level.
Gotcha.
Mainly because I know and I trust and believe in my ability to be able to handle somebody's future and do it objectively with compassion when needed. I know that. So I think that that's necessary and it's needed in a lot of different avenues or ways or in places as far as levels of judge goes.
Sure. Something I always hear a lot, and I kind of I wish I want you try to put some specifics to it. I hear a lot of people say in law enforcement and in the judicial side of things of New Mexico on there that New Mexico has the most screwed up courts, and things, and I don't disagree with it, but through your personal experience, could you give us some examples of like some of the things you've seen that you're like, this should have never happened? You know what I'm talking about? Like like some of the stuff that law enforcement and people in the judicial side of things are saying, when they say this is the most screwed up. Can you tell us like what they're talking about there?
Well, I think that personal responsibility needs to be accounted for.
Sure.
We voted these people in, and most of it comes in from up north. So let's say one of the most recent examples that I can think of off the top of my head is there was a youngster that got, I think, arrested for DWI here in Roswell.
Okay.
He was released because he had to be released. As a juvenile, he had a huge, long record, but that's not allowed to be used against him as an adult. So per the laws, he doesn't have an actual record that justifies him staying locked up.
Okay.
So he gets out, he goes to Albuquerque, and then he kills somebody with his vehicle in a drunk driving accident.
Okay.
Everybody blamed the judges. It's not their fault.
Because they only can do what they're told. They give a set of parameters. There's the max side and there's the minimum side. Right. They can go max, but the max is not getting it done.
Right.
Gotcha.
So they had to let him go. Their hands are tied. So is the system broken? I mean, it's as broken as we allow it to be. We voted, like I said, for some of these people to be in office to make these laws.
Gotcha.
And it just trickles down and it directly affects us. But nobody gets involved unless they think, well, it doesn't directly affect me. Well, yes, it does.
Absolutely.
So things like that. Recently, there was a woman that was charged for extreme animal cruelty. She has mental issues and no real criminal background. The judge had to let her go. And it's like she might get out and God knows what she could do to a puppy again, or even a human being. I mean, these are like.
But the judge's hands are literally tied.
Yes.
Because of what the law says he or she can do or not do. Yeah.
So then they get released with some kind of conditions of release. And that person will likely break those conditions of release. And then a judge is allowed to hold them longer.
Okay.
But like this guy, he got out and killed somebody in Albuquerque, and it's just like, oh my gosh. But it's the laws that we have no choice. So things like that, landlord tenant, oh my gosh, it's horrible what's going on. But again, that's what was voted in.
Sure.
The laws are pretty, I don't want to speak poorly on them, but we voted this in, and it's affecting all of us, especially like landlords. The tenants seem to be getting away with a lot.
So it's knocking on the doors of your legislators and saying, when you're in Santa Fe here in January, we need to fix this stuff.
Exactly. Let's focus on these things.
Gotcha. I'm sure the judges have some kind of representation that bends the ears of our legislators to say, this is what our judges are dealing with.
Right.
Things like that.
And again, that's something that I would be able to do. I mean, to be educated and articulate in this kind of stuff, to be able to represent and say, hey, might not ever win like that battle, like I said, but I'll never stop, because these are things that I truly, believe that we need changed.
Sure.
So, and I believe most people do. I mean, no matter what side of the fence you're on, I believe most people understand this.
I think we all want the best for ourselves and our families. We just don't agree on how to get there.
Right.
And that's where the devil's in the details.
Yeah,
so to
exactly.
Speak. I just saw the time. We're running a little short here, but I want to give you a chance. Obviously, now, for folks that aren't aware, this race for magistrate judge is decided in June here in the primary.
Yes.
So if you are a registered Republican, you need to make sure you get out here and vote. Early voting's just around the corner here tomorrow.
Yes.
And then, of course, the election day will be coming up here in a few weeks. But if folks want to get more involved with your campaign, either helping passing out signs and knocking on doors and things like that, or just wanting signs or whatever they want to do, what's the best way to reach out to you? Or if they just have questions and want to, talk to you a little bit about it.
Probably Facebook's going to be the easiest way.
Okay.
Either on my personal page or my Elect Nicole Rogers Magistrate Judge Facebook page. I respond very quickly to all the messages. And if you want to get a hold of me through there, or elect Nicole Rogers at Gmail. I'm very responsive
Very good.
to anybody that has any questions, comments, or concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's and I invite people to do that and
Yeah.
talk with both with yourself and your opponent
Yeah.
here, because this is it's too easy to get wrapped up in the emotional side of everything, and Lord knows this race has been one of those.
Yeah.
I but at the end of the day, that's a lot of noise.
Yes.
You sit down, talk with the people, talk with Nicole, talk with her opponent, sit and talk, and let's ask the questions, and
Right.
because I think you're going to be much more surprised when you talk down to people, talk face to face, and hear their real thoughts, and kind of cut out a lot of the, lack of a better term, BS in the
Right.
middle here.
Right.
And we desperately need that, especially at this local level, because we all chew the same dirt. We live in the same community. We really do want the same things. I think we all want the best for our families. All want a place where you can get up and know that you can go and have, if your family wants to go and have a great weekend doing this or that they have the ability to do that without any fear or any
Right.
issues. We all want the same thing. And so ask those questions. Don't get wrapped up in that BS with the bickering and back and forth, because I don't care. It may feel good at the end of the day, but you're not solving a single problem, and you probably created more division than unity by doing that.
I totally agree.
Good deal. Is there anything you wanted to say, or anything you want to give you a chance, anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover, anything they just want to get the word out to people about?
Yeah, no, I think we've covered most of it.
Okay.
Now you give me the table and I've completely just drawn a blank. But
Sorry.
but I do want people to really listen. I mean, we're humans.
Sure.
And like you said, we are going, just like when I did county time is what I call it. These people get out and they become your neighbors. So it's all in how you treat people.
Absolutely.
You really, I mean, we're humans, you treat somebody poorly, like you said, you're creating more division.
It's not about agreeing or disagreeing.
Yeah.
It's how you treat people.
Exactly. We can all disagree. What happened to that? I mean, it's almost like it's this cancel culture. If you don't agree with one thing, you're done, and it shouldn't be that way. So. I don't feel that way. I'm not that way. I welcome people disagreeing with me. I welcome challenges. Let's talk about it if you want to. Don't sit, behind a cue. Let's talk about it.
Well, and I would agree, and I think most people agree that has to be a quality of a magistrate judge.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Regardless of if yourself or your opponent, both of you need to have that quality to do that job effectively.
Right.
So
I welcome it. Please reach out and talk to me. My campaign is my big sister and my mother, simply for the fact that I don't want anybody to think I owe them anything. It's the judge's race should be, totally on a different level of ethical, moral, integrity and whatnot. So we can't completely cover Roswell. So if you want, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about anything.
absolutely, we live in a small enough community that if you have a question, if you want an answer, reach out to the source.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I know you're like that. I'm sure your opponent's probably the same way. If you reach out, if you have a question, that's what this race should be about. Is I want to vote for a person that agrees with me on issues, not on the other garbage that's out there.
Right.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the visit.
Thank you.
And I always say this to all of our folks that run for office here. Thank you for stepping up and doing this, because I'm sure you look at your life and I could go many other paths. I don't need the headache. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you want to serve, and win, lose, or draw here, we thank you for your service to our community. And I imagine win, lose, or draw, we're going to see you continue to serve afterwards too. So thank you. Appreciate that. All right, it is 7:55. I better shut up and play some commercials before news, or they get mad at me. So let's pause for